sleeping on the boat without a shower, but there was no belly aching. Everybody got along very, very well. Just glad to be back.
The ferry, arranged by the American Embassy, was the only sure way out for many because the Tripoli airport was overwhelmed.
I had 2 flights booked, and neither one left. So they were all canceled before we even got there. So this ferry was a great deal for us. We were really happy the State Department came through like that.
But for almost everyone we spoke with, emotions were mixed, knowing they couldn't stay and wanting to return as soon as possible.
Just had fallen in love with the place and had incredible place to teach and to live. It was just beautiful. So I hope we can go back. We don't know yet.
Now, it's interesting because a lot of the people we talked to were either in the construction business or business folks from America who are working in Libya, a number of them American teachers who can't wait to get back. On the other hand, we were specifically instructed by the embassy here not to talk to embassy personnel, not to interview them. I've had the opportunity to talk to several of those folks off the record this morning, and they said their experience in Libya was harrowing. Several nights earlier this week, constant gunfire at night. People were afraid for their lives and are quite thankful to be out of the country, and at least one woman we talked to said she never wants to go back. Rebecca?
Harry Smith, we appreciate your account of the situation from the ground there. Thanks. Have a great day. Judith Drotar, a director at the American School in Libya, is one of the nearly 200 Americans who made it out of Tripoli Friday aboard the U.S.-chartered Maria Dolores. She joins us from Valletta, Malta this morning. Good morning, Judith.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
And when you left Libya...
It's nice to be here.
It's so good to have you here, and I'm sure you feel great to be in Malta now. When you left Libya, what was the scene on the ground?
You know, the American School is located out in the suburbs, so everything escalated very quickly. In fact, members of the board of directors and I met on Sunday afternoon and determined that we felt that we could continue to hold school open. And then things started deteriorating Sunday night. So all of the teachers moved to the American School and were there until we could get everyone out. We started hearing gunshots, and we recognized that things were moving closer, but we're all lucky that we didn't have to see some of the carnage ourselves, but we heard about it from some of our Libyan staff.
And you did get out on this ferry. Tell us about the ride to Malta.
Well, first of all, we were on the ferry for quite some time before we had our ride. And I would like to say that we have had enormous support from the U.S. Embassy there. It was a very complicated affair because nobody had telephones. They boarded the teachers first on that ferry, and they have just been awesome. So I hope everybody understands that. We sat on the ferry for quite some time, but the ferry company is also fantastic. They really treated us well. The ride, of course, was extremely bumpy. I've never been a big fan of roller coasters, and so I had to go through 9 hours of it, and I probably will not return to Magic Mountain or any place like that in the near future.
Let us ask you this.
A lot of people were sick. About a third to a half of the people on the ferry got sick during the trip, but, you know, at the end of 9 hours, we were here, and everybody's been very welcoming. The Maltese have helped us. The embassies helped us. We're happy. We're just very sad to leave behind our Libyan friends.
Now, Judith, you won't return to Magic Mountain, but the question is, will you return to Libya at some point in time?
I have 24 intrepid teachers who are fantastic, and we all, to a person, want to go back. Of course, we're not stupid, and we're not weirdos. We don't want to go back when there's danger, but we love the school, and we want to go back, and we hope that things stabilize because the Libyan people deserve that.
Judith Drotar, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend. Thank you. Now here's Russ.
Thanks, Rebecca. The United States is stepping up its pressure on Libyan leader Gaddafi as the regime's violent response to anti-government protests continues. President Obama issued an executive order that slaps full economic sanctions against Gaddafi, his family, and his regime. Those sanctions include freezing the Gaddafi family assets Meanwhile, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is on her way to Geneva this weekend to meet with members of the United Nations Human Rights Council. And all American citizens are now safely out of the country, and the embassy has been temporarily shut down. Here to discuss these sanctions is Parag Khanna, senior fellow with the New American Foundation and author of How to Run the World, Charting a Course to the Next Renaissance. Parag, good to see you.
Great to see you, Wes.
You know, this is not Gaddafi's first time to the sanctioned party. Do you think these sanctions are going to be effective?
That's exactly right. In fact, he's been in power for 42 years, partially because sanctions are imposed on him. That has actually allowed him to cement control over the country. Now, we've seen this before. Castro, the Assad family in Syria, and Saddam Hussein in Iraq. So sanctions have a way of sort of isolating a regime and entrenching it in power. So, unfortunately, you know, the record or the track record of sanctions is somewhat patchy.
In Libya specifically, again, this is not his first time to this rodeo. Sanctions imposed back in the 80s, lifted in 2004. Were those sanctions effective?
Those sanctions actually, again, really froze the country in time. They effectively harmed the population in the sense that they didn't have access to economic resources, to the kind of foreign investment that the society needs to develop. They allow Gaddafi to really own the economy, such as he very much has. So when we talk about sanctions, for example, we're really talking about sanctions not on Libya, but on Gaddafi the man, because he has really colonized and owns the economy.
Yeah, it's a backfire effect, is what I hear you saying.
That's often what happens with sanctions, unfortunately. Right now, of course, these are very short-term kinds of sanctions. This is an effort to just try and squeeze the man very quickly. This isn't one of those things that is going to drag on for years and years, quite frankly, because he doesn't have years left in his life. But that said, they're going to have limited impact on the ground, because right now it's not about money, right? It's about how many weapons does he have, how many tribes does he control. That's what matters more right now than whether or not we've frozen his assets in Geneva or somewhere else.
I see. Okay, if the sanctions don't work, in your mind, what should the U.S. do?
Well, they're going to have to consider more serious options. Flying to Geneva and having a meeting of the Human Rights Council, from which Libya has actually been suspended, is one thing, and they can make statements and declarations, but they're going to have to consider more serious measures. They may have to support the potential independence, in fact, of the eastern half of the country, which whose capital is effectively Benghazi.
Interesting.
That's one scenario that people are talking about, potentially some kind of military intervention to try and sort of isolate him further within the capital, or at least stop some of his military forces from conducting the raids and the assaults that they are on the people. So there's still some options on the table. This is going to escalate before it de-escalates.
Another delicate dance for the White House in this situation, as we've seen over the past few weeks.
Yeah.
You talked about military intervention. How likely is that to happen?
Right now, not very likely. We've seen how reluctant the Obama administration has been to do that in situations after Iraq and Afghanistan, because our forces are stretched. And of course, in a case like Libya, we really don't know what will come next. There are other situations where if you were to oust a leader, you know that there is a government, there is a parliament, there is a cabinet, someone would step in. Here, it's already chaos. You know, just simply taking him out, which is physically possible. But if you don't know what's next, it's somewhat irresponsible.
I mean, Gaddafi was called by Reagan back in the Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, back in the mid-'80s, the madman of the
mad dog, right?
Excuse me, of the Middle East. I mean, as you look at everything that is working against him now, the sanctions, his people are against him. Can he hang on for the next few weeks?
You know, because it is a very tribal society, he can hang on to his part of the country, which does in fact include Tripoli, where the local tribe, which is his own, is loyal to him. Although people within his tribe, family members even, have resigned, have stepped away, have started to back the opposition. But in a situation like now, where he's actually giving weapons out on the street to people who are supporting him, it's really too early to tell. But it is unfortunately possible that he can hang on to Tripoli for a while.
Interesting. Parag Khanna, as always, thanks for your insight.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. And now here's Rebecca.
Thank you, Russ. Noontime rallies are scheduled today in every state capital and in some major cities in support of Wisconsin's unionized public employees.